More money, you got less problems. At least minor ones, all your basics accounted for. Team elite I run with, I'm guaranteed to be Final Four. Less money, you got more problems. More money, you got less problems. At least.
Good evening, back, bringing Albany communities knowledge. Thanks for tuning in again. Tonight, before we even get started, I just really wanted to send out a special shout out. As you guys know, I love to wear new gear. So shout out tonight's sponsors to Mark Edmonds and Paris McKnight, the culture for the culture. Tonight we're doing it for the culture. So I really want to shout them out up there in Albany, New York. Be sure to check them out on IG or Facebook as well at The Culture. And that's what we're going to do for tonight. But outside of The Culture, you know, I really want to tell you guys the architect behind the questions that we typically launch or that every interviewee goes through for these back interviews. We're actually interviewing her right now. So back community, please welcome Krystle Word. I almost said your maiden name, Krystle Word.
We can do Krystle Carter Word.
Krystle Carter Word.
If we're gonna represent Albany, then we got to get Carter in there.
Listen, let me do that again then. Back community, welcome Krystle Carter Word. Thank you for being on with us tonight, Chris. I look forward to diving into your story and allowing the Albany community to learn more about you and that visionary mind that you have.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Good. And like I said, guys, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do with B.A.C.K, I knew exactly where I wanted to go because one, I didn't want to craft the questions myself. I wanted to be able to bring it to a professional who I knew had the words and the skills to deliver what it was that I needed. I went to Krystle immediately and I was just like, hey, Chris, this is what I'm trying to do. And this is what I needed for. And she was able to come up with the questions that have been feeding the B.A.C.K community since July. So thank you very much again. And shout out to Krystle Carter Word, as we're definitely going to tap into a little bit of that during tonight's interview to tell you guys more about her. But Chris, I really appreciate you being on. I really appreciate your early support with B.A.C.K, and your words have done wonders for me and for the B.A.C.K community. So thanks for being on.
For sure. I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. I always start with my unofficial question. You know, we've been quarantining now since February, March-ish. We're now officially in December. You know what I mean? How has the global pandemic affected you? How has quarantine affected you and your household? Have you guys been doing anything creative to stay engaged? You know, let me know how you guys been surviving this quarantine.
So I have, you know, we just have a household of 2. So, you know, I think right about now, you know, we're running out of some of the creativity and the creative fun things, but we've had a lot going on despite the quarantine to keep us busy. We moved during the quarantine. We had like some health things we were dealing with during the quarantine, job changes during quarantine. So, you know, life has, you know, even though I think we all need a breath, at the same time, life is just like still chugging along. So I think that I would appreciate, you know, a little bit of downtime. I'm looking forward to the holiday break and being away from my family in Albany. You know, all of my immediate family, have we said that? I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm just away from my family. So that part, not, you know, being able to see most of my, you know, my parents, my siblings, nieces and nephews.
Okay. Have you guys been doing any type of family gatherings via Zoom? I've seen some families host family reunions and everything via Zoom during this time period.
Yeah, we did one big one, and I'm trying to remember. It was still warm out. It was definitely like in the summer, spring or summer. We did one big one with like extended family. It was fun. It was like chaotic too. So some other ones have been smaller, like for, you know, birthdays and Mother's Day and holidays. So we've definitely been, you know, trying to keep in touch. We appreciate the technology for sure. But I think we're feeling a little Zoom like fatigue at this point. Like, all right now.
Yeah, sometimes they can definitely get out of control. You be like, somebody mute Uncle P.
Yes.
Mute Uncle P.
Or somebody need help with Zoom and stuff. It's like, how many times have we done this now? Like, you haven't figured it out yet. So.
Okay. Well, listen, man, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dive into your first question for tonight, which is, what are you doing now? What kind of work do you do? What kind of passion projects are you working on? Krystle Word, this is your opportunity to tell the Albany community about you.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm a writer and I'm a teacher, and I'm actually doing both of those right now. So I've done teaching at a bunch of different places. Right now I'm teaching at Howard Community College. I'm adjuncting. And I also work for an organization called Baltimore Creatives Acceleration Network. And it's an organization that gives creative entrepreneurs the tools they need to launch their businesses, to support their businesses. A lot of times tools for entrepreneurs are not necessarily designed for creatives or small business owners who may not have, you know, a staff, who may not have, who may not know how to, like, how do I sell my art? How do I leverage my talents and skills in this way? A lot of times people think that creative skills are for free. Like, yo, just come do my open mic. I need this mural for this. I need you to support this. I need you to support that. But support don't always pay the bills, you know, like, you know, support is great. But really helping, so the organization helps creatives figure out, you know, just different ways to navigate and to build their businesses up. So what I do is I create, like, help create the organization's narrative. I do a lot of the story creation, the writing, running the social media, the website, that kind of thing. And then a bunch of other freelance writing creative projects.
Okay. Listen, like I said, man, if anyone is questioning the authenticity of her skill, like I said, the thought-provoking questions that you put together for us to use here should be a prime example of the work that you can do flawlessly. So, you know, I think Krystle and I might have started working together somewhat when I was running Model too. And one, like I said, you know, I knew you had a way for words. So it's just like, I always try to play on people's skills. And I was like, well, hey, you know, I'd love to get you involved. You're a positive person. And I was just like, well, why don't we do a newsletter? You know, that way you can highlight your skills that you do and highlight the work that we're doing there. So to see you still with your word wizardry and your play on words, and to be able to help other small businesses or individuals like myself trying to go ahead and create something is pretty dope.
Yeah, you know what? And it's what kind of feeds me. You know, I kind of appreciate it, whether it's teaching, whether it's working with a small business owner. It's like motivating for me to work on those sorts of things. I used to work for Hopkins. I've worked for other big organizations, but that type of writing where I could get paid more, did it necessarily, you know, fuel me? I left job, you know, like that's probably one of the jobs where I got paid the most was actually a job where I've quit one job in my life, and I was getting paid, you know, decent money, but there was some, you know, it wasn't tied to my purpose. It wasn't something that I felt like I could get up every day and do. I was also in my 20s at the time, so probably had a little more, you know, leverage to just quit a job. I don't know if I'd do that right now without a plan, but I'm saying that to say I knew then, you know, that I had to, because this is like, I feel like it's not just a passion, but it's a gift. And like when my gift starts to get muddied up doing things that, you know, I don't think is right, or integrity is questioned and stuff, then I just don't want to do it anymore. So when I connect, when I connect with small business owners, when I'm connecting with my students, when I'm connecting with creatives, whether it's a paid project or not, I have to believe in it.
Okay. Okay. Hey, I understand it wholeheartedly. It's just like we all have 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week. The difference is what we choose to spend our energy on, where we choose to spend our time. And we can't spend it on everything and everybody because, like you said, it doesn't align with your purpose.
Right.
Align with your purpose. Well, this is my favorite question that I enjoy asking every person that comes on, and it's really different asking the architect who created the questions, but I'm really excited to see where you take it as well. But this is my favorite question out of all of them. Where's your favorite place to go in Albany and why?
Ooh. So outside of going to my parents' house, which is obviously, it's actually not one specific apple orchard, but every year I do like to go home and have the tradition of apple picking because I had a great uncle who took us every year when we were little kids. And so like it's continued with like my nieces. So that's like that's probably one of my favorite things because it's tied to a tradition that I had in childhood, and I'm watching like I'm able to do it with like another generation of family, and it's really tied to an experience. So.
Okay. So apple picking.
It's something I can't really do. It's not the same where I live. So.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. I always like to stop, and I never did the apple picking, but I would always pick up apple cider and the cider donuts for some reason. I don't know why, but I would always stop.
Oh, you know why? Because they're delicious.
That's probably why. Well,
Yes.
It's like, yeah, I don't want to go apple picking, but I do want some of these apple cider donuts and some apple cider. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. Thinking of your younger self, Krystle, what is something that you wish someone would have told the younger Krystle Word?
I wrote this question and I want to hear from other people, but it's a hard one. I think that I wish people would have told me that it's okay to change my mind or to start over. Change your major, move to another city. Just because you've made a commitment, you took a job in a city, doesn't mean you got to stay there. Just because you decided this was going to be your major and you always thought you were going to go down this path, it's okay to change. So really kind of just owning that power that a changed path or trajectory doesn't mean a failure. And just, being willing to shift.
Okay.
I was rigid. I was too rigid when I was younger and too hard on myself.
It's interesting, man, because I mean, like some of the things that you just said, though, is like I've seen you move to different states or to try different experiences. So I don't think that and maybe I didn't know that Krystle as well as I know this Krystle. But probably looking back, you might have been more rigid than what I knew of. Yeah,
just afraid to take certain leaps based on what I thought other people thought I should be doing, or how risky certain things were, or how my decisions would impact somebody else, and kind of just trusting myself a little bit more. So I'm getting there.
Okay.
But it was a long road.
Okay. I respect that. For a person who has a love of words, I'm going to ask you about your love of education. Do you think education saved you or opened up doors for you? Why or why not?
Didn't save me. I hesitate to say save, because I think that there are so many people who had very similar educational opportunities to me, but there were other sets of circumstances that sort of disallowed access. I think that when it comes to education, there are almost as many factors to my journey that were sort of kismet and luck as there was based on my hard work. So I always try to kind of maintain a level of humility and say that, like, you know, yeah, this is probably sounding crazy coming from someone who has been an educator for the last 10 years. But well, I will say not save me, but definitely open doors. I mean, you know, even if just a crack, right? Because to just apply to certain jobs, to have certain opportunities, you have to have it, and to get in certain, even though just looking for new opportunities, just, you know, having the requirement of credentials. So in that formal way, education, I say, sometimes only open the door a crack. And sometimes I almost think that there are moments where I feel a little bit like resentful, like, you know, y'all told me all you got to do is go to school and this will happen. But I will say, in the more informal ways, I absolutely think that education has saved me, has shifted my perspective, has changed the way I see the world, has opened me to have relationships that have impacted my life in terms of mentorship and in terms of learning new things and challenging the way that I was thinking and not even knowing that some of the things that I was thinking could be expanded. So like, yes, I guess there's two answers to that question: education and many informal education, I think. And a lot of the paths I took, like, for instance, I have a professor from undergrad who absolutely impacted my life. But I also think that there are, you know, a whole lot of things about my undergrad experience. You know, sometimes I think maybe I should have went to an HBCU, you know. There are things that I think about. So, you know, yeah, formal education sometimes, informal education absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, you know, it's, you know, education is a hot topic right now, especially with everyone like, well, listen, you know, you don't got to go to school. You don't got to go to school, especially if you're going to accumulate this amount of student loan debt and stuff like that. But myself and my boy Marshawn, we call him Callie, you know, we were just having this conversation the other day, though, just like, you know, yeah, you can get other experiences, and yeah, you don't have to pay the amounts you have to pay to go to school. But, you know, the friendships that we formed, the opportunity to get away and to mature away from what we're used to, you know, I don't know what my life's path would have been like, you know what I mean, had I not gone to Charlotte. You know what I mean, had I stayed in New York or something like that. I'm just like, it just like, whenever I think of the question or I see it, I always just be like, you know, yeah, you know what I mean, that joint just sparked the bulb, and it was just like, wow, you know, I can be smart. It's just like, oh wow, you know, and I can have friends, I can have a whole nother world or a whole nother life outside of here.
To me, that ties directly into Albany, right? The way we saw education, the divide in terms of community, prejudice, certain things, like, I think that going away and seeing certain things definitely showed you like, oh, okay, so there are, you know, entire communities of people who look like us thriving in a different way, which is why I think that's the part of my answer, right? So there are some of the best parts of my life and experiences of my life happened in undergrad, and I went to school in freaking Buffalo, okay? So if you can have all of that in Buffalo, okay, I can only imagine what it was like, you know, in Charlotte at an HBCU, having those connections. Fortunately for me, I went to a really big university, so even in that PWI, there was enough of a community where, like, I feel like I had a whole lot of Black friends. Like, all my friends from college was Black, and I didn't feel like I was at a loss for them. So that was the good thing about going to a large university. But yeah, but I think that when I was when I went to school in Albany, well, you know, we lived near each other. We walked to school, right? And it was us walking from the hood, right? And then when I got to school and I was in all honors classes, it was like me, Quisha, and I'm pressed. You see, I'm like, really, I mean, it's been a while, so forgive me if I'm forgetting somebody. It might have been one, but for the most part, listen, there wasn't that many. And so it really was right there telling you like a tale of two worlds. And it created this feeling of like scarcity, like there's only a couple of slots for us, which just isn't true, right? It created like this idea of like tokenism, like, okay, they're represented, they're in, we've got enough, you know, close the gate, forget about the rest. So it was just this really, and you become acutely aware of it. And then there's always this need to, and I see this as well when I teach, even though I've always taught here in much more predominantly Black areas, but like this need to feel like I'm not just showing up for myself today, I'm showing up for everybody else who I walk to school with and are not in this classroom. So I have to be the best, I have to be greatest, I can't, you know, make a mistake. You know, I'm carrying, my mom still talks about to this day how me and Quisha used to like have all these books on our, you know, back, doing all this extra work. I remember I applied to 13 colleges when it was time to go to school. Got into 11, it wasn't necessary, you know, like, but I felt this like need to, you know, that's why I said I was more rigid, like to overachieve, gotta be class president, gotta be on youth court, gotta be a junior teacher, gotta do this, gotta, and it was just kind of like, but do I really have to do? I mean, a lot of it was great, but sometimes looking back, part of my motivation was proving myself.
Okay. And you know, that, I mean, that says a lot within itself. I remember interviewing Sheena Collier,
oh,
and
yeah,
she was
yeah,
saying how much her dad focused in on education. And, you know, she wished that, you know, part of it was that, you know, they didn't focus as much in on education and allowed her to explore other areas of life, you know, I mean, that she later explored. But, you know, yeah, so the rigidness, I guess it's give and take with it, because I think that I was rigid. You know, it was like I didn't smoke, I didn't drink. It was just like, you know, I had a whole nother circumstances I was dealing with. I'm in the streets. I'm dealing with certain type of people. I don't want to get caught up too much and be like, okay, now I'm a permanent fixture over here. And it's like, you know, I know that there's another way up over here. And it was just like, but so you got to have a certain level of rigidness about how far you're going to go, what you're going to get involved in, and what you're not going to get involved in. And it's like, you know, you going a little bit too far. So, you know, I got to cut you off and go another way.
And I had a strong support system. And I also had, I mean, you know, my mom, and I think, you know, my dad too, like my parents, I had parents who didn't really play either. So, you know, it was kind of like that combination of, but I put a lot on myself, and my parents would tell me, you know, to this day, like, you know, all of that, because, you know, my brother too, like he didn't necessarily, you know, pressure himself in the same way that I pressured myself. And that's why I say when I look back at my younger self. But again, I think a part of that was the education, you know, being in, I truly believe that if it had have been much more of a balance at Albany High, right? And much more of a balance of students, more representation of Black teachers, or at least some more teachers of color, even if they weren't Black. And it felt more natural. It didn't feel like getting out and going to college was like it might not happen. If it felt more like an option that I chose rather than something I had to work really, 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 really hard for to make sure that I got there, because it doesn't happen for a lot of people. Like that was always in the back of my mind, right? Like how many of us were first generation to graduate from four-year institutions in some branch of our family or another, right? Like that becomes, whether you, I think that conscious or subconscious, I think we know it. And I hope that for, you know, younger people coming behind us, that they can find their way more organically. And be willing to, you know, deviate a little bit and explore a little bit, and not think that there's not two options. You either in the streets and you fail, or you're, you know, following this path of getting straight A's and going to college, because neither are really a perfect path, right? And you've got to meet somewhere in the middle to be a youth and to be a teen, and you've got to kind of allow yourself that natural trajectory.
I like that. I love that. And, you know, that is something that, you know, we have to showcase. And like I always say, like, you know, I was always scared of being positive. My younger, the younger version of myself, because it was like I thought in terms of being positive, there were all of these things that you had to give up about yourself. You couldn't be cool. You couldn't be associated with these guys. You couldn't be associated with certain things, and it was just like that was as much of a fallacy as perhaps the rigidness that you left on yourself too. And it was just like, so it's just like, but when you're trying to figure it out, you're trying to figure it out the best way that you know how. And there weren't that many success stories or people that, like you said, you pointed out, you and Quish. So your path was to ensure that, you know, you didn't become just like everything else that was around us. So it's just like, well, you know what? I want more. And I always say, like, our generation was like, for me at least, you know, and I may get beat up for saying it, but for me at least, our generation was like one of the last generations where everyone wasn't trying to migrate towards a particular behavior or the streets. And it was just like, there was people that still aspired. Like, you guys were motivational. Just like, you know, it wouldn't have been the most coolest thing at the time, you know what I mean? Because at the time, it's like, it's kind of like the more messed up you are, the cooler you are. You know what I mean? But now when you look back at it, you'd be like, no, these were the things, these were the tools that would have gave me, you know what I mean, a leg up. So, you know what I mean? It's positives and it's negatives. So like you said, right, you know, you got to find that balance.
Yeah, there's neither of those paths are perfect.
Yeah, I like that. Let me see. Well, sticking to that, do you feel that during your early education between K through 12, that racism played any play in regards to the education that you received?
Hell yeah. And I know just why I wrote that question. Absolutely, I think it does. And I think that as I didn't realize as how much until I became a teacher, and I watched teachers educate in a way and look in a way that makes me be like, oh my God, like this is what happened to me when I was in school. Like, I don't want people to teach that way. I still have experiences, Tyrell. Like, I can call out, and I won't say it like on here, but I can call out the names of like students, white students who got awards over me. I can remember one time in like 3rd grade where I didn't get an award, even though I had the highest average. And the teacher told me, well, you can announce the awards because I could only pick one and you two were too close, you know, with your averages. I can think of, I had 2 Black teachers in Albany schools. 4th grade, I had Miss Van Troy at Ash. And in Albany High, I had Mr. Pettis for Earth Science. I don't know if I could think of nobody else. I know everybody else had somebody. There was another Black teacher that taught like maybe history or something at Albany High. Black woman, but I didn't have her. So I'm just saying that to acknowledge, I do know that there was like another one there, but I didn't have that experience. But I'm saying, like, when you got to start really like counting on your fingers, like from your K through 12 experience to where it was. And also my parents are very pro-Black. So I'll have to say that I grew up, basically, I might as well have been raised by like Angela Davis. And so I had my parents, for kindergarten, I went to this small Black school on 2nd Street between like, what is that? Between Lower 2nd Street. So I can't even think of what it was between. I was in kindergarten, but it was on 2nd Street and it was called Almega Academy. And it was all black teachers. And like, they just pushed you and you learned a lot. And I can remember like being in the classroom with like students who were older than me. It wasn't necessarily all by grade. So that was like one of my earliest experiences. But then the school closed down. So I only got to go there for kindergarten. But I went, I mean, you know, 2nd Street, I went to school in the, you know, with Black people, only Black people. And then after that, I went to a school in Rensselaer, and I was the only, Black person there, and I won't even get into those stories. And then my parents, mostly because of those racist things, they switched out, and I went to Schuyler. Then I went to Ash. Then I went to Livingston, I think, and I feel like I'm forgetting the school. I went to a lot of schools, but going to all those schools, I feel like I got a good, I can say fairly, I got a good grasp on. There's a teacher I remember at Albany High, my brother's name is Adanji, and she refused to, she acted like she couldn't pronounce his name correctly, and it was almost like she was intentionally saying it incorrectly. And I can remember having to approach her, and that wasn't even my personality in high school. But so yeah, there's a number of experiences that I feel like made me feel like sometimes I was doing it because I was going to show them, I can do this just as well. So I always felt underestimated in my K-12 experience. I often felt passed over, even when I knew deep down I had done the best job. And after a while, you start to think, well, maybe I didn't. And you start to second guess yourself, and you start to become less confident, when it happens over and over and over again, it chips away at you a bit, even though, and I'm saying I had a strong support system at home that were giving me books to read. And, my grandmother gave me the bluest eye to read when I was, I don't know how young, but I was giving me Morrison books and giving me all types of things to read, and shoring me up. And still, with all of that support, it began to chip away at me. So imagine students who don't have a lot of support system. Imagine students who really are struggling academically, and then are, in addition to that, are not getting support, maybe not getting enough support at home, and are getting passed over. That combination it's really crappy. So, and it's not a whole lot of once you get to the high school level, I noticed since we've grown up, there's a couple more middle school options, but in terms of public high schools, it's not that many options. And so, I do think it was racist.
Okay. Yeah, hey.
Listen. And I'm obviously passionate about the fact that it was racist.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it because, though many people that I've interviewed have said that, they didn't recognize racism until later on in life. And it was I envied them for that too, though. I'm just because, anyone who's able to skip that experience, right. Hey, listen, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? But, there's also those of us, individuals like yourself, who just said, he's oh no, I was aware of it. I can
very early on.
very on. It's yeah, you don't like me because of what I'm wearing, or you don't like me because of my hair, or you don't like me because of whatever it is. And, I appreciate the telling of the stories. And it's with the words that you crafted, you can ask so many people the same exact question, but those questions are going to lead down totally different paths for everybody. And that's the uniqueness of it. So, so no, I appreciate it. Like I said, when you said it, it was all right. Let me see. Interesting one for you, especially since you grew up in a household that could have been similar to Angela Davis-esque. The Black Lives Matter movement isn't just about police brutality, but it's also about dismantling systematic racism. If you were in charge of mobilizing or organizing the Black community for one or two, what would be your top one or two things that you think we should tackle as the Black community?
Ooh, I ain't write this one. Let me see. This is a hard one. I think that there has to, I think one of the things that we have to tackle is not concerning ourselves with the system, the mainstream systems that we don't have to. So there are some that we can't escape, obviously, and I'm I actually get frustrated when sometimes people like, we need to just disengage from everything. I was like, okay, but I can't plant a garden and do all that quite yet. So I'm gonna need to engage a little bit. But I do think that there are certain things where like we should avoid looking for validation where we don't have to, when it comes to things like awards and accolades, when it comes to things like the way we present ourselves in the world, and we should present ourselves in the world the way we want to be. You know, we've spent generations of, you know, parents, you know, putting on suits to go show up at the bank and at school, or to go march, and you know, and none of that ever changed the way we were seen. All it did was make us put forth a whole lot, expel a whole lot of energy that we could have saved for ourselves. So I think one thing that I want us to do that is a less tangible is focus a lot less on the outward, you know, the gaze on us, put more of that energy on ourselves, because I think that until we do that, we're not going to be able to mobilize and focus. We are so starved for self-care. We've had to go so long with surviving, with fighting. And I know there's still a lot of fight, but we deserve self-care. We deserve luxury. We deserve to be with our families freely. We deserve, you know, all of that thing, you know, that whole like raise a free Black child kind of attitude, you know, be your free self. Because, and this is going to sound harsh, my attitude is they're killing us for less. I just can't walk around being anybody but myself, because if Black Lives Matter movement, what's happened over the last few years, if it's shown us nothing else, it's shown us that no matter how we show up in the world, our lives aren't valued by a large segment of the population. The second thing that I think I do is probably still surrounding that is about community building. And it has to be more formalized. And I think we're starting to get there in terms of mobilization of, you know, not just saying hashtag shop Black, but actually finding ways to you know, support each other financially, support our businesses, send our, you know, let our students know it's okay to go to our HBCU institutions, holding one another up. And I don't want to just say accountable, because I don't want to get into that finger wagging thing. But, you know, holding each other up when we need support and showing up for each other in ways that we need it. Other than that, my answer is I don't know, because it's hard as hell. And I think everybody thinks they have the answer. And I've looked at all of the, like, however many point plans for the Black community. I've listened to the celebrities. I've, you know, followed a lot of the, you know, social leaders, and everybody has, you know, you can probably find a good point from everybody, but it's really hard. And I think that pausing and taking care of ourselves and our communities and giving ourselves a little bit of a moment to be vulnerable is important too.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And you know, it shows the humanity of us through your answer. And it's just like, you know, imagine that constant pressure to have an answer, to have to put a voice on a particular thing. Is like, sometimes it's just saying, like you said, I don't know.
Tired.
Yeah.
A little tired.
Yeah. I don't know. And I think Larcelle Stovall and I were talking, and we're just saying, you know, if each of us, just as individuals, focused on ourselves and our household, right? What that small difference would turn into for the larger scheme of things. Right. Because ultimately, like, we always end up talking about macro level problems, but it's just like, you know, we may not have the resources or the means or the creativeness to figure out the answer to the macro problems, but we can figure out the micro problems, let's just focus in on, you know what I mean, you being a great representation as a wife, as a Black woman in your household. You know what I mean? Let me focus on being a father or being a husband. Those examples are what we can focus on to change the overall picture of what's being painted in the Black community. And it's like, you know, because I don't got an answer for everything. So I like what you just said. It's like, sometimes it's, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I'm going to try my best, the way that I see fit, the way that I consider it to be authentic for me, you know what I mean? And, you know, I'm not going to shoot down someone else's plan because their way or what their authenticity looks like for them. You know what I mean? Give a little space, a little room for it all to marinate.
Yeah.
Let me see. This next question is going to hit hard. One, because I want to say this might be the most violent year, if not definitely one of the highest years in my reading of what I've seen in Albany. So sadly, Albany has seen more and more violence, and our communities has experienced a lot of loss over the past few years, definitely for 2020. But what changes would you like to see? What is your hope for the city of Albany, Krystle?
So, I mean, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but I definitely hope for the violence to quell, but that is, I think, an empty hope without some sort of intervention or plan. And I think that we have to look at and rely on community in the form of maybe like, you know, I read a while ago about this concept of everyone needing a shepherd. And, you know, really thinking about mentorship and, you know, that connectiveness, because while I mentioned like my friend Quisha a couple of times, but like when I think of you, when I think of LaVasia, when I think of, you know, my brother and his homies, when I think of like the people who, you know, have been able to come to sort of maintain, to stay away from certain things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They always were linked to somebody. They always had somebody to like, you know, and I'm not trying to say that me and my girls was about to go pop somebody. That's not what I'm saying. But whatever it was, we had, you felt like you had a peer or a mentor or somebody to hang on to. And even in my teaching, the students, I've had some of the students who people would say, you know, quote unquote, the worst students, you know, in the school and all of this stuff. But when they had somebody who they were able to connect with, that changed things. I think that, you know, if I know that, you know, used to be pretty successful, like when they would have like the basketball tourneys and things like that. Like if we could use some events and things like that, or the planning of the events to springboard some sort of opportunity for mentorship, for internships, maybe even, you know, I know I said we're all tired of Zooming, but, you know, you could connect people to a mentor outside of Albany because of things like Zoom. Not saying you, Tyrell, but I'm saying like, you know, I think that I don't know about like how to quell violence in terms of, you know, the gang interactions that, you know, I've been reading about and all of those things. But I do know that if you touch individual people, you can have larger impacts. And I think that, you know, trying to, all those young people who are getting into this trouble, most of them are going home to somebody. And so we have to be able to figure something out. We all know Albany ain't nothing in terms of the Black community, but 10, 12, couple big families, right? So, you know, how do we figure out how to mobilize in that way and say like, okay, how are we going to put our hands on our people and say, like, you know, not shame you, not, you know, wag our finger at you, but like, I want to hold on to you and I'm not going to let you go. And that's the kind of concept of shepherding. Like, you're mine. I'm assigned to you. I'm going to work, you know, I'm going to work with you, that you can tell me anything, that kind of thing. You know, and even if their mentor or their person isn't necessarily local, I think maybe something like that could help.
Okay. Yeah, I think it might. I'm sitting there. I'm looking for my next question, but I'm also still thinking of your last answer. Just like, I think even in your last answer, it still ties into the fact that there's no one way to tackle the issues that we have, because it's not just one issue. It's so many different issues that lead to other issues because they go unresolved. And it's you know, but I like to say that I grew up in Albany at a time where it was a lot more positivity going on, you know what I mean? And that's been a common theme through people that I've interviewed too. They've always said, what happened to all of the community centers? I've got to say, like, at least 10 of the 15 might have said, yo, we had tons of community centers. It's just like, there's no places for the youth to go. And if you look at the numbers, you know what I mean, most of the people who are involved in what's going on right now, the shootings and stuff like that, they're really young. And it's just like,
I asked my niece about, I was like, cause you know, like, y'all don't have like Boys and Girls Club parties anymore. And she was like, what's that? I was like, oh,
secrets.
You don't know about right. You don't know about, come on now. Like, we had a good time. So yeah, it's definitely all of those things. And I also think, like, a lot of times people feel helpless to change things. And I think, like, playing to your strong suit, like whatever your strong suit is, that's kind of how you can help. And I think that sometimes it's like feeling powerless, like, what can I do? Like, I noticed you know, Paris doing the community workouts. You get, you know, maybe we could, you know, some people doing some cooking classes, you know, whatever people's talents or skills are, you know, if you can play to that. I know COVID makes things difficult right now, but I used to feel kind of overwhelmed, like, well, what can I do? And I've been doing a lot here, and I haven't really been doing much at home. So, you know, it definitely challenged me to think of ways that I can do more things in Albany. But for sure, I think, like, allowing people to, you know, what is your strength? What is your talent? What is not going to feel like such a heavy lift? And how can you contribute? Like, we don't have community centers, but guess what? There's pop-up events, you know, that people can do. All these people have been coming on and have businesses, you know, could be a pop-up event put together, you know, sell some stuff, do, you know, just organize. And again, I'm not saying you dive around, but I'm just saying the way in which, you know,
no pressure taken.
Right. The way we maybe organize to kind of recreate the vibe of some of the things, because you just people don't need brick and mortar places as much anymore. I know in the wintertime in Albany it's hard, but you know, people are creating, like I said, doing pop-up events, you know, renting spaces at certain places. I know I think you interviewed Tatiana right? You know, I know she's had event spaces, like, you know, just thinking of ways to kind of recreate that environment and having, you know, like a Friday night teen event, having, you know, certain things where even though we don't have that, how as a community can we recreate some of those
Yeah, and I think that would be super dope. And it's just the one lingering thing for me is safety. How do you create those things and ensure that, you know, you can create a safe space where you don't have situations that happen? Because, like, even for Tot, you know, I mean, with her running the business or that down there, that activity, you know what I mean, caused them to have to get out of the banquet hall business. And so it's just like, you know, safety is a major factor. And I think I was talking to Charles Toohey and Scooby on an earlier interview too, and it was just like, you know, we want to get people to come back and buy the community, us more more in particular, but it's just like safety is still a major concern. So it's kind of like, you know, one of those things that has to be on the table is being able to hold each other. I know you didn't want to say that word earlier, but accountable, you know what I mean, in this aspect. You know,
yeah, well, I was refraining from using it in a slightly different context. Yeah, so no, I use the word accountability all the time, but I just, when I was talking about my peers, I wanted to make sure it wasn't.
Okay, let me see. Think of some of the hardest lessons that you have experienced and the wisdom you have gained after going through them. What would you tell the generations behind you to encourage them to get through some of their most difficult times?
Two things. It's really not necessary to learn every lesson through experience. Like sometimes someone telling you, someone who cares about you, or even you just witnessing someone's hard way to go, can be enough of a deterrent. Like, we do have to live our way through certain lessons. I totally believe that you got to let people find out for themselves. But sometimes I think I didn't have to be quite as hard-headed as I was. So sometimes just listening to people who came before you. Older people know more. You know, they just often know more. Not always, but often. There are some exceptions. And then the other thing that I would tell them is take the lesson and let everything else go. You know, so for instance, if you fail a class, the lesson is next time I have to study. The lesson is not I'm not smart. The lesson is not I'm never going to get through college. The lesson is not. The lesson is the next time I take this class, I'm going to have to put in more time because it was harder than I thought. That's the only lesson. All the negative talk about yourself, all of the put downs, all of the overthinking it, and again, this is something I'm still working on. It's not necessary. It's only makes it harder for the rest of your journey. So, you know, lesson, what could I have done differently? I'll apply this the next time. That's it.
Okay. And success is measured in so many different ways. How do you measure success? And what keeps you motivated when you face obstacles?
If you'd had asked me this question probably even right before the quarantine, it might have been a little different. But self-reflection and a bit of therapy have helped me come to realize that success is, for me anyway, is a lot more about how I feel about myself, how I show up for myself, and how I show up for the people who care about me. And, you know, if I can go to bed at night feeling pretty good about what I've done. Now, that's all in context of sort of the grander scheme in terms of my goals. Like, I'm a goal-oriented person, so I'm working toward, you know, goals in a much more general sense than I used to. So it's like, yes, you know, I have financial goals. Yes, I have, you know, maybe educational goals, especially as a younger person. Yes, I have these creative goals, but I am successful if I am serving myself as I aim for those goals. So for instance, in the past, I was just like, kind of knock down all these goals. And then I felt like crap at the end of the day, because somewhere along the way, I no longer was passionate about it, or I was burning myself out, or I was maybe not doing it for myself anymore, or I didn't really I wasn't proud of, you know, maybe the path I had to take to, you know, get there. You know, so I would just say that, you know, make sure as you're measuring success that like you're checking in with yourself and you still feel good about, you know, how you're going about things, and that, you know, what you're shooting for is still something that you really want.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it changes too over time. You know, I can even look at my experience and how young I was doing model. And, you know, I would say that, you know, that experience itself, Scooby and I say it all the time. It's like, you know, if we had a couple of more years of maturity underneath our belt, or tutelage, or wisdom, how much further we could have gone with that. But you know, so in the idea of success, eventually I got to a point where I realized that, you know, you can want something for other people more than they want it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you got to take care of you, Tyrell, and you got to make sure that you put yourself in a position to really help. And in order to do that, sometimes you got to let go of other things to reposition and rebuild. And, you know, so yeah, so when you're saying, you know, like I said, everyone's picture of what success is, or how it feels, or, you know what I mean, what it's going to look like when you get there, it changes. But I think there should always be, you know, I love that word, authenticity. There should also be some level of what ties it back to you. You should be able to understand why you want a particular thing, and it shouldn't just be for vanity purposes. You know what I mean? It should be because, you know what I mean, this is my purpose. This is my gift to share. You know what I mean? Or, you know.
Right. And ask yourself, you know, just, I always try to pause, and when I'm not feeling good about where I am or how much I've succeeded, I always have to pause and ask myself, am I using my own measuring stick, or am I using one, you know, from the outside world, you know, where my peers are, what I think expectations were based on blah. I remember it wasn't that long ago, I asked my mom, like, I was telling her, well, you know, I always thought, you know, I can't remember what it was, and she was like, not me, you. That was your expectation, like, you know. So sometimes we think like, oh, but my parents expected me to do this or be here, and, you know, or this was, you know, my 5-year plan, and it didn't happen like this, and, you know, like, so, you know, just making sure that you're measuring yourself for yourself and not.
Yeah, and it's actually it's right now we have so much opportunity to create what we want success to look like for us. You know what I mean? Yeah, before it would be laid out in particular ways. This is what success looks like. You have to present yourself a certain way. You got to dress a certain way. Your hair has to be a certain way. And, you know, we create our own definition of what we want success to look like now. I remember when Jean was getting ready to create her website design for her new law firm, right? And I'm just like, you know, you set the example of what you wanted to be, you know what I mean? Because you positioned yourself to be able to tell your story how you want to tell it.
Right.
It's no longer underneath the auspices or the rules of somebody else's terminology of how they thought it looked like. We're now positioning ourselves to create success the way that we feel comfortable with success. And that's pretty dope.
Absolutely. And it's freeing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about your life's path are you most proud of?
I think it's probably what I used to be sort of embarrassed about. And it's like all of my zigzags, you know. I got my bachelor's degree in English, which I fought for a long time. Then I was all set to start working on my master's of public administration, actually at Rockefeller in Albany. And then I changed that, and then I started doing editorial writing in Albany, and then I decided to get my MFA, and then I moved to Baltimore. I started teaching, and then I left that job and I went back to communications, and then I was, you know, I've just been all over the place, and I switched. I even got laid off one time and started taking classes I started nursing school. And then I was like, oh yeah, just kidding. Don't want to do this. Don't know why I ever thought I wanted to do this. I'm going back. So, you know, just like a lot of pivots, but you know, trying to find my way. Still.
Okay. Okay. Listen, every day on this side of the green grass is a good day because you can still find your face.
Exactly.
How has traveling or relocation impacted or shifted your views of the world?
I think this was, I mean, it continues to, but I think that this traveling question makes me sad during COVID. But I thought of, actually, I know why I wrote this question. When I remember going away to college. And like I said, I only went 4 hours away from home in Buffalo. It wasn't that far. I was still in New York State. And I can remember not having been around, not really having been drawing much a distinction within the Black community, right? And so I remember going to like an African Student Union meeting and then be like, and, you know, kind of being like, there was like some fodder and conversation, you know, starting about, you know, there was some division within the Black community and the African community at school, and not like necessarily division, but not conflict, if that makes sense. Like it was territorial is probably the more better word than division. It was very territorial. And, you know, I was just kind of like, I don't know, Black people, like, you know, I mean, aside from like, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know, go to Kenneth Roy's, you know, we had a little bit of Caribbean taste. We didn't have a whole lot of, you know, restaurants, especially where our particular community. We didn't have a whole lot of, it's not like we were just randomly, I don't know about you, but I wasn't going to, you know, Ethiopian restaurants and Indian growing up. Like I wasn't doing those things, you know? So like, you was just my kin, you know, any skin folk was my kinfolk in my mind, right? If you were Black, you were just Black people. Yeah. And so it was the first time that I was made more aware of how disconnected I truly was from like my, I guess, heritage. Like my sense of Blackness was very, I knew that like my dad would always say, and my parents would always say like, oh, you came from kings and queens. And that was always a very like lofty, you know, and I'd read books and I knew that in a very like lofty sense. But most of the history that I knew and most of the connection I felt when I did stop and evaluate it, as much as I didn't like it, really was rooted in African American history, right? Which African American history in this country starts with enslaved people, right? I know that's not where our story really starts, but if you're talking about history books and what we learn in school, and so just thinking about that, and so it just changed my view in terms of it expanded my thinking and my understanding of Black cultures and how there are Black people in lots of different cultures, and, you know, learning about, you know, the Afro-Latina community and all different types of, and just really understanding that the Black community is really, really broad and we're all connected, but we're all unique. And I remember that being one of the first big lessons I learned when I went away to school, which sounds so basic and almost embarrassing now that I think about it at like 37, but at 18, I was just like, why they being so bougie? We all Black, you know, like, and now that I think about it, it actually does. I do feel a little bit embarrassed, like, girl, you was a fool. Like, you really didn't know.
Listen, don't feel bad.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Listen, don't feel bad. I say the same thing.
And then when you studied abroad, you know, and then you were sending me information and all that stuff, you know, so exchanging information. So it just began to broaden and expand.
Listen, mine was horrible. I thought that every Black person outside of African Americans were Jamaican. So and you know, and I always say it just to showcase, you know, my lack of exposure. Like Albany actually has so much more diversity than it is recognized for, and a lot of it is because most of us end up stereotyping or putting everyone into one category, and we're not one category. So I was just like, you know, to be able to have like a cultural event, let's say you have a food testing event on Judson Street or Central Avenue, where, you know, you can embrace and highlight different cultures, because we got mad cultures there, whether you got a Guyanese family, you got a Haitian family. Listen, some of my closest friends when I went to Charlotte was from Boston, and they used to have this big Haitian flag up, and I was like, I don't know what that is. You know, my wife is Haitian now, and it was just like, and I always tell her, it was like, yo, I had no clues. Like in my mind, he was like, you were black or you were Jamaican, you know, you were white or you were Spanish, and it was just like, but
just
it's
Spanish
so,
too, like that's the
Spanish.
language. That's not even like the appropriate, just Spanish.
Yeah. So it's like, man, traveling and meeting different people, you know what I mean, forced me to recognize the fact that I did not know as much as I should know about other people in the world. And if you got the right mindset, you can very easily adjust. And realize that, you know, hey, you know, I can learn about you and you can learn about me. And then, you know what, now we can change this cultural perspective, you know what I mean? But, you know, some people don't. We don't step outside of our comfort zone. And it's just like, well,
yeah. And of course, there's like many more experiences and places, you know, when as an adult that I've been, but I always go back to that, thinking about like, you know, Albany, and like, you know, if a young person is watching this, I just want them to know, like, we don't just snap our fingers and like all of a sudden we're like worldly and we just, you know, we're trying all these. No, there were certain things I still remember, like the first time I ate sushi, like, and it was not in K through 12. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, it was just little things like that, where now, like when I do certain things, sometimes I do have to remind myself, like, girl, certain things you just didn't, you know, don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. Don't know what you don't know. My first time for sushi was in Baltimore, down at the harbor.
Oh,
and
really?
I fought it so bad. Jean kept saying, she was like, you know, I love sushi. I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that. But take that back. My first time with sushi was freshman year, and it was at like some fast food restaurant that I got forced to eat it, and it was the worst thing ever. But my first time having delicious
I was gonna say that does not would have been good.
Yeah, was in Baltimore, down at the harbor. We went there, and I've been in love with shrimp tempura ever since. So,
gotta have good sushi.
Let me see, man. I got 2 more questions for you, and I'm gonna let you go on and go tonight. Actually, are there any resources like apps, podcasts, motivational speakers that you like to watch that motivates you? Here's your opportunity to educate the Black community on some of the things that help to motivate you.
You know, one of my favorite ones to listen to is an NPR one. Stick with me. I know that sounds dry, but it's called How I Built This. And I just actually listened to the McBride sisters' stories, McBride Wines. And their story. So it just often tells the stories of brands or innovators who literally started like with nothing and like making stuff in like their mom's basement, and now they're like, you know, huge successes, right? But all of their failures along the way. And sometimes I'll just like play an episode just to kind of like remind myself, like when I'm having this go time again, like restart, like, damn, I have to restart again. This one didn't work. And it's reminding myself, like, better people have had to, you know, well, not better people, but you know, it's part and parcel of it. And the other one that I really like is Shortwave is a good one to get into. It's a daily one, and I listen to it most every day. And it's just like a quick 5-minute, like you just learn something. And I like just like learning random things, because you never know when you're gonna need or use it. And a lot of my other ones that I like are kind of, but, so yeah, that's it for podcasts.
Okay. And before I miss the opportunity to say it or to highlight it, Can you tell the B.A.C.K community about Krystle Word Carter and your services that I was so beneficial of? Because, and the reason why I want to touch back on that is because I think that people in the inner city are probably some of the most creative people you're going to meet. Not to say that creativity doesn't come from all over the world, because it does, but you know, being able to put your ideas on paper, being able to bring your ideas to fruition. I can't even say that word right. Sometimes it takes somebody to help you to see it. And, you know, like I said, I knew what I wanted. I also knew that I didn't have the capacity to word it the way that you did, and you helped me tremendously with that. And I want people to know about the services that you provide, because there's a lot of creativity that can come about as a result of people being placed with the right people. And well, what you do with your services are dope, and I think that the world deserves to know about it. So can you please tell us about your business there, please?
Well, thank you. You really hyped me up now. Better make it sound good.
Ah!
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's krystlecarterword.com, and that lists like I offer services and workshops. So the workshops I typically will offer once I get if I start to get a few inquiries for a certain service, and maybe people don't necessarily have the they may not have the time or the money to like invest in like a longer project, but they really want like to sharpen their own skills. So like I help them learn how to do some of the things themselves. So like I'll do like a series of like Saturday workshops based on some of those things. But the other like direct services that I do, a lot of it has to do with branding, helping people to launch when it's like time for them to prepare business, you know, when they're working on their businesses. So that means preparing social media content, writing their website content, helping to create pitch decks, whether you are like a podcast who needs to pitch for advertising and funding, if you are pitching yourself for a job, because I am a freelancer, sometimes I need to create a pitch deck that's like, hey, this is my skills, this is what I have to offer and I bring to the table. If you offer services and you want to list your services, if you're a if you're offering consulting services, if you're, creativity or something, I can pull those together for you in a way, but in a way that really makes sense in your voice, that speaks to you and that speaks to your audience. So really just working on personalizing it, making sure it tells your story in a way that not only communicates your message, but is authentic and humanizes you. So those are a large part of the things that I work for. And then I also do, I work with students too. So like helping them prep for writing the college essay, not the SATs. I'm out of that business, and them kids will stress me out. But prepping for the college essay. So like if students want to start writing their college essay, they always have to do like 3 essays to prepare for college, helping them get those essays together. If it's a matter of helping college students with, coaching for writing skills, we all know you have to write a ton in college. And sometimes it's really about kind of just getting a little one-on-one help to sharpen your skills overall. Sometimes that 1 or 2 English class that you take, you got through it, you did enough to get through it, but now you're taking 300-400 level classes and they're expecting you to write this philosophy paper or the psychology paper or something else. So really just kind of supporting students through the process. People have asked, I do not write papers for you. Darn it. I don't sell papers, but I do support you through the process with, editing and also just giving you skills to help empower students. And I work with young people and adults.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you for telling us that. I definitely wasn't going to let you go without asking that. But my last question for you is, I typically ask everyone that I interview, if there was somebody that you thought that I should interview for a back interview, who would it be? You don't got to tell me why, unless you want to, but who would you like to see me interview next for back?
LaVasia.
Okay.
LaVasia Bullard.
Okay. All right. And I actually, to be honest, you know, she might watch this too, but I have her name down because I think I might have asked you this question already. So, yeah. So, but yeah, I have her name down for season 2 because we're already booked up for the rest of season 1, which I said that I'm going to end at the end of April with an interview with Decky Lawson and Patrick Flay Robinson around the Albany Sports Complex and
nice.
But yep, I definitely have her name listed down there already. And now I'm almost certain that I did speak to you about that already. Yep. Well, listen, back community, thank you for sticking in there with us through tonight's interview. I want to thank Krystle Word for her time. I want to thank you for your services. I want to thank you for helping to make back the success that it has been in such a short time. And without your creativity and your word wizardry, you know, it might have taken a little longer to get over that hump. So I highly recommend her. And one, what do you say? What do you say? I'm not only a client, you know, but I'm definitely a client myself. So, but thank you for extending your time with me this evening. I truly appreciate you as always, and continue to stay positive and stay being the motivational force that you are. Thank you, Krystle Word, and thank you to your husband for allowing us to steal you for a while. On this
He's all right. He's probably tired of me. It's been a long quarantine.
It's been a long quarantine. Well, listen, man.
All right, and thank you for creating this platform. Thank you for, you know, shedding light and bringing inspiration. I really appreciate it, and I know a lot of other people do too.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and you know, I am thankful to be used, and you know, for it, and God willing, He'll get the glory. So, all right. Well, you have yourself a wonderful night, and I'll play catch up with you later.
All right, later. Good night.
Later.